to let you, YouTube, and my present guy know the same thing. This test, we're going over the test for tomorrow. We're going to take this as an assessment grade. Tomorrow, during our meet at the beginning of class, we'll go over directions for this. And we're also going to go over directions for a writing assignment we're going to have to finish off Hamlet and be done. This test has 10 multiple choice questions, 2 essay questions. A couple of the features on this I want to make sure everybody understands is that your screen is split in 2 when you take this test. You'll have a question with multiple choices on this side, a little click the dot, and then on this side are Act 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Some of the questions ask for evidence, or the last 2 questions I think do ask for evidence, but sometimes they'll mention, oh my screen's tweaking out, pardon me for just a moment. Whatever that was just all about. That was wild. Okay. So anyway, some of them will say like in Act 3, Scene 1, whatever is happening. And if it's doing that, if you're not sure, if you don't remember what they're talking about, you can go over here and click on Act 3 and then scroll down to the part they're talking about. They'll even give you lines and stuff for what you're using on that to be able to answer it. So we're going to run down through these. We're going to kind of explain why some are right, some are wrong, and all that sort of fun stuff. First question, and I don't know if you can see that back there or not. I'll try to move it over where you can, maybe. It says, what is the difference between Ophelia's madness and Hamlet's? So, Ophelia goes crazy. Hamlet seems crazy. What's the difference? We have different choices here. The top one, I would say, appears to be the correct one. It says Ophelia's madness is authentic and caused by external conflicts. Hamlet's madness may be feigned. Just a moment. And so, Ophelia, she's pulling out her hair and calling it flowers. She ends up drowning herself, whether by accident or on purpose. And so she seems legitimately nuts. Now, Hamlet talks a lot of crazy stuff, but it's usually to insult people in a way that they don't even understand. And by the end of the play, if you remember that last couple of scenes, when he is dueling with Horatio in a friendly match, he seems very much in his right mind. And then at the very end, when he's fighting Polonius' son, Laertes, when he's fighting him or gets ready to fight him, he's asking for forgiveness and says, please just blame it on me being crazy. So it seems like he might have been in control all along. The second choice says Ophelia's madness results from unclear causes. The causes of Hamlet's madness are clear. Not necessarily, because we know Ophelia goes crazy because of the way Hamlet treats her and her dad dying. It says Ophelia's madness occurs after her conflicts have already arisen. Hamlet's occurred before. No, both of them are post-traumatic. Hamlet's dad has been murdered. His mom has married his uncle, which is weird stuff. And of course, Ophelia's happens afterwards. But let's remove that one. Ophelia's madness is curable and temporary. Hamlet's madness is incurable and permanent. No, because we see by the end it seems like Hamlet is very much in his right mind, and Ophelia doesn't get the opportunity to be curable because that's the end of Ophelia. So we're going to pick this first one here. Ophelia's madness is authentic, so on and so forth. So next one on this list says, how is the ghost of Hamlet's father related to the rising action of the play? Now, they give some good answers, but you're always searching for the best. And so, does the ghost cause Hamlet to become confused and indecisive? Does he cause Hamlet to examine his motives before acting? He causes Hamlet to seek revenge against Claudius. He causes Hamlet to feel more kindly toward Gertrude. Many of these actually work out to be actual things that happened in the play. But the main thing that we see, because it's asking about the rising action of the play, going toward the climax. What brings about the climax? It's he causes Hamlet to seek revenge against Claudius. So that would be the most correct answer to use. So we're going to choose that one, and we'll keep moving along. Number 3, the paradoxical phrase with mirth in funeral and with dirge in marriage. In Act 1, Scene 2, it indicates something about Claudius. Now, this is still very early in the play that Claudius says this. And remember, what paradoxical phrase means is something that seems to contradict itself. Like at one point, Hamlet says that you have to be cruel to be kind. In other words, he's going to do something that seems mean, but it's in order to do the right thing. So it's a contradictory statement, it seems, on the surface. Here it says, with mirth and funeral and dirge in marriage, and it gives you the place you can look it up. So if you want to look at it in context, you could go to the left side of your screen. I've blown this up so you can't see it. But you can go to the left side of your screen, click on that, and go to it and read it in context. But I want to give you, and if you read it, if you go back to the play, often it'll explain what these words mean in the margin or in the column there, next to the actual play. I'll go ahead and tell you mirth means like celebration. So it's like with celebration and funeral, and dirge is like mourning or sadness. So it's like sadness in marriage. So celebrating at a funeral, sadness at a marriage is the phrase that Claudius used. So the question is, what does it show or demonstrate about Claudius? Confusion, sensitivity, honesty, ambivalence. Ambivalence means kind of a dual expression. In other words, being happy and sad on the same occasion. So in a funeral, there's a little bit of sadness, I guess you could say, with his brother dying, but there's also celebration there. And of course, getting married, he's happy, but on the other end, can it also be sad? And so let's run with that for right now and see if that seems like the most correct answer by the end. Act 1, Scene 2, Hamlet alludes to Hyperion and Niobe. It says, what purpose do these allusions serve? Now, if you were to go back, if you go to the left side over there, the left side of your screen, you could click on it and go back to it. I did this earlier with another class. We looked at this and looked in the column. And what's happening is, when you read it in context and you read the column to explain, you might not know Hyperion right off the bat, but in the column it explains that is the god of the sun. And so what he's comparing here is, what it's actually explaining here, instead of saying Claudius is like the god of the sun, saying that comparing Claudius to Hamlet Sr., who's the dead dad, say comparing them is like comparing the god of the sun to this half-goat boy mythological creature. And then Niobe is a mythical creature or a goddess who mourned the loss of her children and was so sad at the loss of her family that she grieved. Even when she was turned to stone, she still wept because she was so sad. So Gertrude is being compared to this very mournful Greek figure, and Claudius is being made to look like a stooge next to this one. So, what is it? Why are they using these allusions? An allusion is a reference to another source, another story of some kind. Well, they link Claudius and Gertrude to the crimes committed in ancient tragedies. Those aren't stories of crimes, so let's not do that one. They identify qualities of Claudius and Gertrude that are carefully concealed. I don't think there's anything hidden about them revealed there. They suggest that Claudius and Gertrude are equally guilty. Again, there's nothing about guilt in those stories. So then it says they are used to characterize the behavior of Claudius and Gertrude. Now, does it directly characterize their behavior? No, it contrasts it. It shows how off their behavior is. That here are stories of people who greatly mourn, but yet she's celebrating a new marriage and stuff like that. So we want to go with that last answer down there, that it's used to characterize their behavior. Let's keep trucking. Fifth question. What is the internal conflict Hamlet expresses in his soliloquy at the end of Act 2? He has every reason to be fierce and angry, but he is weak and refuses to act. He is terrified of his own murderous rage, so he's unable to do anything but mope. He feels that the cruel injustices of the world are far too great for him to correct. He is unsure whether bloody revenge is a proper reaction, so he hesitates to act. Let's go ahead and go to that link there on this one. It's his soliloquy, his little speech he gives off on his own at the end of Act 2. So we're going to go to the end of Act 2. Might take us a while to get there. Okay. So Rosencrantz and Guildenstern exit. It says, now I am alone. Oh, what a rogue and peasant slave I am. It is not monstrous that this player here, but in a fiction, in a dream of passion, could force his soul to his own conceit, that from where her working all his visage waned. Made him turn pale. Now this is where he gives the speech about Hecuba. Remember the actor was crying and as he was playing the part for Hecuba. And he's like, who's Hecuba? Nobody to him. He's nobody to Hecuba. You know, they're not anybody. And you know, but yet he could cry. But if I was crying, I'd flood the whole stage with tears, he's saying. Here we go, line 585. But I am pigeon-livered and lack gall to make oppression bitter. Or ere this, I should have fatted all the region kites. So, he's saying that he's pigeon-livered, that he's weak, that he's fearful. So, that's what he's wrestling with. He knows what he has to do. The spirit I've seen may be a devil, and the devil hath power to assume a shape. So he's saying, you know, maybe it's maybe it's the devil trying to get me to do something I shouldn't, or what have you. But nonetheless, he's wrestling with that. So the thing that he constantly struggles with is that he has every reason to be fierce and angry, but he's weak and refuses to act. We could also say it's close run. He is unsure whether his bloody revenge is the proper reaction, so he hesitates to act. But I'm going to stick with he should be, but he's weak. We'll come back to that. This one, be careful, because some of them ask for two answers. This one asks for two answers, I guess, on this test. There's only one. Select two questions Hamlet asks in his to be or not to be soliloquy in Act 3, Scene 1. And what he's saying in this soliloquy, if you go back and look at it, and I would recommend you do that if you're struggling with this, is that he's saying is death, well, the first thing he addresses in the to be or not to be play is he says, should I just accept suffering? Is it just the way it is? Or should I fight to end it? So that's one of the ones we want to choose. Now after that, he starts to talk about sleep, but be careful, because it's better to sleep than to be angry. because he starts to talk about sleep, and he uses sleep as a metaphor for death, and then he just starts talking about death. Is it better to just be dead and not suffer, is a lot of his speech, which is ironic because we begin to see later on that is that's what Ophelia does, and, well, pretty much everybody in the play, except for Horatio. It says, how does Hamlet's encounter with Fortinbras in Act 4 help Hamlet to avenge his father's death? Now, if you go back to Act 4 and you read where he encounters Fortinbras, the thing is, he isn't actually speaking to Fortinbras. He sees this army marching, and he actually speaks to Fortinbras' captain. And he's like, well, who's this army and what's going on? Fortinbras, his only part really is to say, go ask the king here, Hamlet or Claudius, go ask them if we can march across their land. We want permission before we go. And so they're marching. Now Hamlet catches the captain and says, who are these people? Who's marching? And he says, well, Fortinbras. He said, well, where is he going? What's he doing? He says, well, there's this little piece of worthless land nobody even wants. It's not even worth anything. But he really wants it, so we're going to go claim it. And that's the nature of their conversation. So, this says, how does this encounter help him to act or in helping to avenge his father's death? Is it Fortinbras encourages Hamlet to seek revenge as a way of curing his madness? Well, he didn't really talk, and there wasn't a talk of madness, so I don't think that's what we're looking for. Hamlet decides that he would like to be as free of conflict as Fortinbras is. Is Fortinbras free of conflict? No. He's marching to fight for a worthless piece of land, so that wouldn't be it. Fortinbras agrees to support Hamlet in his effort to become king of Denmark. There's no discussion about that right here. So, Hamlet is inspired by Fortinbras' passion about an insignificant parcel of land. And he is. He looks at it and says, wow, this guy's really willing to go to war for a worthless piece of land. So I should have that kind of courage and passion about what I'm doing as well. And so he feels inspired now. Okay, we have a question of order of events. And what you'll do to do the order of events is you'll just click and slide what happens. We see that Claudius, and this one's tricky because it says Claudius realizes that Hamlet threatens his reign. I think he sees that throughout the play, but let's say with what all's going on, with what all's offered, let's say that the first thing to set into motion is Claudius reacts to their performance. Well, after the performance, Hamlet goes to visit his mom, and that's where he says, a rat, and starts shanking the curtains. After that, Gertrude tells Claudius, yeah, he really is crazy because he just killed a man. And so then Claudius says, well, he's a threat to my reign, and that's when he actually hatches a plan to have Hamlet shipped off and killed. So that's the order we're going to go for now. We'll see how that works out here in a moment. Claudius reacts to the performance. Then in the queen's chamber, Hamlet kills Polonius, so Gertrude thinks he really is crazy. And so Claudius finds good reason to believe that Hamlet is a threat to him and wants him killed. The dramatic climax in the tragedy of Hamlet occurs when... Now, here's the thing. Dramatic climax, that's the height of action. That's like the big showdown, so to speak, in any story. The main event of what's happening. So in this story, we have... We're getting close to the end. Thank heavens. It says, what role does Horatio play in the resolution of the plot? Well, resolution is what happens at the end of a story. You have rising action. That means the events are taking shape for what's going to happen. You have a climax, which is the height of action, the big showdown or main event. Then you have following action, the consequences of that, what happens afterwards, and then shortly after that you have the resolution, how things end. They lived happily ever after for a lot of people, but not in this case. It says, what role does Horatio play in the resolution of the plot? He is one of many characters who dies at the end of the story. Wrong. He's like the only guy who lives. He vows to tell the truth about what happened to Hamlet. That's a good one. Remember, Hamlet, for some reason, he gets to take longer to die. And he tells Horatio, be sure and tell everybody what really happened here. And he promises, even as Fortinbras' army, I think, approaches and asking what's going on, he's like, I'm going to tell everybody what just happened here. He claims to have rights to the throne of Denmark. Let's not do that. He's a character who benefits most from the events of the play. If he became king, sure, but otherwise he's lost his friend, he's lost his king, he's lost his queen, he's lost like a lot of stuff. So I wouldn't say he really benefited. He might not have suffered as much, maybe in a way, but anyway. So I would go with he vows to tell the truth about what happened to Hamlet. Number 11. One of the main themes in the tragedy of Hamlet is generational conflict. What conflicts does the younger generation have with the older generation? So generational conflicts, parent and child. And there's several of those going on. There's several going on with Hamlet, with several people, with Ophelia. So be ready to explain some of the generational conflicts we see between the old and young in this story, and not just between family generations. There's probably four people, I could say, that Hamlet had generational conflicts with, people that are older than he is. Some being parents, one not being a parent. Ophelia had a conflict with a parent. So watch for the generational conflicts. Be able to cite some of that. Use complete sentences, capitalization, punctuation, please. Citing evidence from the text, how would you characterize Hamlet's madness? So, that's kind of an open-ended question. You might think it was legitimate, you might not. You might think it was severe, you might think it's mild. You might think that it was temporary. However you would characterize it, The important thing is that you're going to cite evidence from the text. Give me instance in the story that backs up what you have to say. And the more evidence you can have, the better. And the more specific you can, the better. So that's how you need to be answering that kind of a essay question at the end. Let's see if we can jump back and forth between the answer key and the test itself. See how we did on this. I'm not going to claim I'm perfect and got everything right, just right off the bat. So, okay, first question, the difference in the madness. Here it says, A, Ophelia's madness is authentic and caused by external conflict, while Hamlet's madness may be feigned. So, we chose this one up here. That was the correct answer. Second question, how is the ghost of Hamlet's father related to the rising action? Well, the correct answer was H. He causes Hamlet to seek revenge against Claudius. He does make him kind of examine his motives before acting. He does tell Hamlet to act more kindly toward Gertrude. It actually causes Hamlet to be a little bit more confused and indecisive. But the best answer is he's the one that sets Hamlet on a course of revenge. Because remember, Hamlet's like, well, I kind of thought something was funny. But after the ghost, he's positive. So we see the paradoxical phrase, mirth and funeral, dirge and marriage. So, Answer 3 was D, ambivalence. That's a vocabulary word we were talking about. It means where you kind of have dual emotion about things, or confused emotion, you might say. So that's what Claudius was having. So even before he felt guilty after the play, he was already wrestling a little bit with his decisions. Of course, in the end, he's like, well, what can I even do about it? So ambivalence is what he was expressing. So Hyperion and Niobe, I suggested that it's saying they are used to characterize the behavior of Claudius and Gertrude. Yes, it was to show the behavior of Claudius and Gertrude. Number 5, the internal conflict he expresses at the soliloquy at the end of Act 2. Said A. Again, he has every reason to be fierce and angry, but he's weak and refuses to act. Remember, that soliloquy was about being weak and pigeon-galled. Weird expressions we don't quite use these days. The 2 questions Hamlet asked in to be or not to be soliloquy. We're going to go down. H and J. So, we have, is suicide really a viable option to escape from suffering? Is one of the things he wants to know. Is death better than suffering? And is it wiser to just accept that they're suffering and go on with life? Or is it better to actually fight against it? What's the best thing to do there? Number 7, how does his encounter with Fortinbras in Act 4 help Hamlet to avenge his father's death? Hamlet is inspired by Fortinbras' passion about an insignificant parcel of land. Remember, it wasn't a conversation he had with him. He saw his actions and said, I'm on board with that. That gives me courage now. I need to act like that. Okay, so the order of events. 3, 2, 4, 1. So the first thing was Claudius reacts to the player's performance. The next thing is Hamlet kills Polonius. The next thing is Gertrude says he's crazy. And then the final thing is Claudius realizes that Hamlet threatens his reign. So that's the order we called out, I believe. Number 9, the dramatic climax. Oh, so I called that one out a little bit wrong. So number 9, the climax we're actually looking for is Hamlet finally commits himself to seek bloody revenge. So then the falling action, I guess, would be everybody dies. I guess. So, well, I guess he commits himself to bloody revenge when he goes after the king and forces. It's tricky. So, what we're actually looking for is that Hamlet finally commits himself to seek bloody revenge. Number 10, what role does Horatio play in the resolution of the plot? He vows to tell the truth about what happened to Hamlet. So his big thing is, at the end, he makes the promise he's going to let everybody know what really happened here and kind of let Hamlet live on as a legend for being the good guy in the story, kind of, I guess. And anyway, so then you have your multiple choice. So there it is. Like I said, we'll be posting this to YouTube later on. So if anybody needs to watch it and that wasn't able to watch it here, it's going to be up and ready to go. But do study this. Make sure you have a lock on it. This is an assessment grade we take tomorrow, Wednesday morning. And so be here for our Google Meet at the beginning of class. give instructions on an upcoming project, give instructions on this assessment, and then the assessment is tomorrow's work. Have a good day.